A very straightforward menu for this episode of the Rugby Paper Podcast as we look ahead to a tantalising round 4 of the 2023 Six Nations. Joining me and the entire gang of columnists to look ahead to England, France, Scotland, Ireland and Italy, Wales is former British and Irish Lion and England prop forward Fran Cotton. A return to rugby this week following a fairly extraordinary episode actually with James Waterhouse last week. Plenty to look forward to in round 4 of the Six Nations with 3 fixtures that, to be honest, I think could go either way. The gang's back together. Brendan, Nick and Chris is back, having taken a brief week off last week. How are you, Chris?
I've been better, but the sight of Fran Cotton just lifts my spirits above and beyond anything I could imagine.
Well, you've done my intro for me. 3 British Lions tours, and he's gracing us with his presence this morning. Fran Cotton, how are you?
Well, thank you. Yeah. Sitting up here in Langley, Macclesfield. No snow yet, boys. So the game's on.
No snow where I am either. But we've just been talking off air. It has hit the south of England, certainly. Fran, have you watched all 3 rounds of the Six Nations so far?
Certainly have, yeah. I think it's been a superb tournament so far. It's as good as I can remember. So it's been a great tournament so far, and looking forward, it could even get better.
Certainly could. Let's jump straight into it. I want to start with England-France. And we were talking about England-Wales and it being a bit of a clunky game. And you certainly had sort of 2 slightly stodgy styles pitched up against one another, a lot of kicking, etc. And I'll come to you, Fran, about this. What game do you think England want to be playing against France? It felt like they kind of matched Wales's kicking game and sort of beat them at it. I don't really feel like you can afford to just kick into French hands, given that the French play quite an expansive brand of rugby. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly don't want to give their back 3 easy ball to run back at you, because that's certainly what they will do. So, I mean, the thing about England's kicking game, I can understand the box kicking, in certain parts of the field. And in fairness, against Wales, that was extremely good because we always were there either to retain or put them under real pressure. But, some of the kicking, certainly going into the opposition 22, I just can't understand that. I mean, the classic was when Slade grub a kick through in the last 10 minutes when he had the 2-man overlap. I mean, that's bread and butter stuff for centres and wingers to score. So they've got to improve on that, and we've got to be confident enough when the situation presents it to really go and play, not just kick, go and play, because we've got some exciting players.
That sort of brings me to the first big topic of debate in terms of selection. It's Wednesday, the team's not out yet. Marcus Smith, Brendan, was sent home to get some game time, maybe an audition of sorts in the big game against Exeter. It probably couldn't have gone much better. I'm going to go around the group. Brendan, I'll start with you. Everyone pick their starting fly half. Obviously, no Ford, and Chris, I know you sing the praises of George Ford. Maybe you would have liked to see him. But Brendan, who would you have at 10?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Marcus Smith. I didn't think Owen Farrell was very good last time out. No players beyond dropping. He's made it awkward because they've made him captain. It has to be a 50. It has to be a straight call. You can't fudge around with moving Farrell to 12 now. England have got a decent centre partnership at last. So yeah, I think it's Marcus Smith's time with Owen on the bench.
Chris,
I think it's I think it's unusually difficult. I think actually the press possibly overreacted. Unlike the press ran to overreact, isn't it? I think the press possibly overreacted with the fact that Marcus Smith was sent back. He played no rugby. And if he's going to play a part against France, he probably needed some game time. I mean, it seemed entirely logical to me that he should. Yes, you always run the risk of injury, of course, and that's happened before. But if he needs to get a bit of get some wind in his sails a week before a big game, if he's going to play any part at all, then that was a sensible move by Borthwick. Would I play him at 10? I'm not completely sold on the Marcus Smith thing in the way that some other people are, although I think he's got rich potential. I rather suspect they'll play Farrell again because even though Farrell didn't kick particularly well by his standards at goal in Cardiff, he's still a top 80s, almost 90% goal kicker at test level. And if you've got a very big game and you need a 10 who's going to kick you some goals and be defensively extremely strong against a very, very powerful French side, I think it's a no-brainer. I think he'll stick with Farrell and possibly play. Smith will come off the bench, hopefully with slightly more than 20 seconds left of the match.
Nick?
I definitely go with Smith. I think that if England have got any ambitions of playing the sort of game that Fran has talked about, they need to have an attacking fly half who is a threat to defences as well as a creative threat. I think his goal kicking is pretty good. His stats are very high. I think Test match goal kicking is a different beast in some ways. But Owen hasn't been going well in that regard. I don't think that he's been poor. I just don't think during the Six Nations, I just don't think he's really taken the game by the scruff in the way in which he does for Saracens. He doesn't seem as comfortable in the England pattern as he does for his club. And if they're going to find out about Smith, time is moving on. And this is a big pressure game. And this is the sort of game that you've got to test a player like that. And you've got to start him in if you want to find out what the answers are. And that's the big question.
Yeah, I've got to say, I agree. Fran, lastly, I'll come to you.
Well, I'd definitely start with Marcus Smith. I thought he was superb against Exeter. And if we're going back to being a little bit more adventurous in the way we play, then I think Smith is the one who can deliver that. I think as important is going to be the choice at scrum half, because I do think that when Mitchell came on in both games this season, we've actually looked a lot slicker and quicker. Van Portfleet is a good young prospect, but he's got to improve his basics. I mean, he stands up with the ball too many times, taking space away from outside. So if I was selecting, I'd go Mitchell Smith as the halfback combination for the game against France.
I'm completely with Fran on Alex Mitchell. As you know, I think he's been the best scrum half in the country for 2.5, best part of 3 years. And I'm amazed that he's not established as England's number one already. I mean, for anyone who's almost as quick as Steve Smith, what's not to like?
Yeah, I thought you'd say that, Chewy. Still on the Smith conundrum. Going back to what you were saying, Nick, is you're running out of time to look at alternatives to Farrell, right? And do you think that if Farrell starts game 4 and game 5, as to be honest, I'm expecting him to do, all of a sudden you're saying that Farrell will be the 10 through to the World Cup? Because again, it's high stakes games and any World Cup warm up probably wouldn't be to the same extent. All of a sudden, do you trust Marcus Smith, who hasn't actually played one with a big 12, a direct running 12, which he deserves to have a chance to do like he does at Quins, but also without Farrell at 12 to steady the ship when the toys go out the pram?
Yeah, I think the last point's a very good one. I think he does need to play alongside Lawrence. I think we need to see what he can do in that regard. Look, talking about World Cups, it's still, we're still, 8 months away or whatever. A week's a long time in rugby. If Smith starts against France and it doesn't go well, then, coach is inevitably going to look at his other options. I think he's already looking at his other options as, first and second and Smith at third. And I think that that's the wrong pecking order. I think that Smith, if England were to lose against France and then lose badly against Ireland, I think if he starts Smith for one game, he's probably got to give him a second start as well, unless it's a disaster. We'll see where he is in terms of being able to run a game successfully for England. And that needs to happen now. And if he needs to retrench thereafter, if England don't have what it takes to play the fast game, maybe he has to revert. But it wouldn't be something that I'd be looking to do quickly, because the England pack is not as formidable as some of those that we've seen. And it seems to me that the fast game is not only the game that's going to, it's the game that's going to be successful for England if they want to be successful at this World Cup.
Yeah, that's interesting. Fran, do you think that this 10 conundrum is a good problem to have at this stage? Obviously, depth is, a good thing, but to have your captain at 10 when his spot is under fire is not necessarily beneficial for the team.
I mean, to have depth is a good thing. I think what's important that Steve Borthwick needs to decide the philosophy of the team, because if Ford had been fit and match fit, I would have started with Ford against France. So Ford and Smith will be my choices at fly half. But if we want to play in the way that we need to play, if we're going to be successful in the World Cup, the good thing about starting Smith on Saturday is you're going to find out it's going to be a high pressure game. Can Marcus, and he's got all the ability in the world, can he manage a really, really tough test match? That's the question mark. I think he can, but you need to see him do that. So going into the World Cup, personally, I think it's Smith and Ford will be my choices at fly half. If we're going to play with the kind of expansive game and quick game that we need to play, and we need to play against France, because France have shown that if you play a quick game against them, the last 20 minutes, as Scotland did, you can find a lot of space out there that we can exploit. So hopefully we're going to play a fast game. And that's why I think scrum half and fly half, quick players, that's what we need to do to be looking at.
And who would your captain be then in that scenario?
I go with Courtney out. I go with Genge.
Okay, nice. Just thought I'd ask. Now, Chris, I'm going to come to you about this. I've just, since Smith's 20-second cameo or whatever it was against Wales, just a little bit has been circulating about him potentially being another Danny Cipriani in terms of the enigmatic flair player who never really gets his chance to the same extent. Do you think there's any danger of that?
No, I don't think the comparison is in any way appetite, really. We have to remember that Cipriani, for all his I don't know, is peccadillo's a reasonable word? Probably in Danny's case, for all the problems he had off field and the problems he had with his own teammates and what have you, which have all been very well documented down the years. What really knackered Danny was injury. He was on the cusp. Well, he was actually in the England side and very much on the cusp of fulfilling the considerable, epic potential almost that very, very good coaches saw in him. And then Ollie Barkley fell on his ankle and it put him back an awfully long time. It was a bad injury. It cost him a yard of pace. And that's the other thing that people forget about Cipriani, was how quick he was when he came into big time professional rugby. It cost him that yard of pace, which is a pretty shocking thing for anyone of his style of play to suffer. He was then rushed back at the wrong moment, and then, for reasons best known to himself, he pushed off to Australia and did what he did subsequently. So I don't think Marcus Smith is in any way in that category, either temperamentally, as far as I can gauge it, and I've never met the guy, temperamentally or in his physical state. Nothing tells me that he's unpopular in any way amongst his teammates. He's certainly not suffered an injury on anything like the magnitude that cost Cipriani so much. So I don't think the comparisons are there at all.
And he's already got more caps and sips, I think. So, he is in and around the camp constantly. He's not getting the run of starts that he wants, that Danny never got. Danny never got a run of starts ever. And in fact, the last 7, 8, 9 years of his career, it was just bench or 10 minutes at the end, wasn't it? He was never given a chance for 2015 to sort of try and press his case, or 2019. But yeah, I don't think they're really similar cases or similar personalities at all.
Brendan, do you expect any changes to the starting 15? Obviously, Laws is out now. Do you think he may have come in, given the size of that French pack?
Possibly. I'm with Chris there. I think it might be time for Alex Mitchell to start. I think that would be interesting. But no, I think England have got, they've got to build on what they've won 2 out of 3. They've got to build on that, just be better, really, and quicker.
Fran, we've spoken already about, well, Nick said it actually, about how this England pack is not a driving force that in the same way that in England pack has been. Does that worry you against a French side of that power?
Well, thoughts against Wales. I mean, I thought England pack overall was pretty good. I mean, particularly the back row. I mean, that's been the front 5. There are no issues there, provided Itoje gets back to anything like his best form, because I don't think it has been his best form. Front 5 is good. Front 5. Back row I thought was outstanding against Wales. And they're going to have to be outstanding again against a very, very strong French back row. So I think it's going to be even Stevens there on Saturday. So I don't think there's going to be anything that you can highlight as a weakness either side. I think the important thing is you've got to move this French pack around. You got to move them around and do it from the first minute. Keep the pace of the game up. Make them run around, because you got some very, very big human beings in that French pack, and I don't care how much training they're doing. When you start running them around, those big boys, they tend to blow a bit. So that would be my message to them: move them around, keep improving, because we improved from the first game to the second game against Wales. Keep moving forward. What will be interesting in the scrum, because at the very highest level, we've seen the scrum creak a little bit, even with Ellis and Sinks in the front positions there. So I just want to see them have a dominant game against a good scrummaging pack. That's what I'd like to see.
Fran, as we've got you here, can you roll back the years and just give us a little insight into those beasts you used to take on in the French pack? And you propped, because you moved around and they moved around, you propped against both Papper on board and Sholly, didn't you? What were their respective qualities, if that's the right word? Who was the best?
Yeah, my first time I met Gerard was 1975, and his first cap at Twickenham. And I always remember coming in the dressing room and getting all the match programme, and you look at the pen portraits, look at the opposition, and it started off Gerard Sholly, who's the ex-heavyweight boxing champion of French Armed Forces. You can't think, now I wonder why they picked him in the team. So you just knew, and he was a massive bloke. But Papper on board, to me, was one of the greatest prop forwards of all time. I mean, he not only was he difficult to scrummage against, he was also a very good player around the field. So he was absolutely outstanding. The 76 pack was the best pack I ever played against. And that front row of Sholly, Paco and Papper on board, that took some beating. So I don't think they're quite as fearsome as they used to be. And they're certainly a lot more disciplined in terms of foul play than they used to be. So,
except for Mr. Hawas, or however you pronounce his name, who's got a punch up sent off against Scotland.
Yeah. That was unfortunate. I mean, the good one was in the Scotland game when he brought a big right hand over, didn't he, and got sent off. But I think the massive change in French rugby has been the discipline. I mean, that kind of stuff was just standard play in French rugby. That's just the way he played. Now far more discipline, and even this team is one of the best disciplined teams in the Six Nations in terms of penalties and so forth. So, a different style of play, but they're still formidable pack of forwards they've got there. That's a good pack of forwards France have got. So England are really going to have to be up to the mark.
That great pack of the 70s, Fran. So who was in the second row at that time? Was that that very nice Michel Palmier, the pacifist, and Ambenon, perhaps?
Ambenon, yeah. Oh, yeah, they were nice.
Alan Esteve, the Man Mountain.
And then a pretty poor back row of Reeves, Skreller and Bastiat.
That's one of the great back rows ever, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
in any era, that is one of the great back rows.
It was perfectly balanced, massive amount of power, and a scrum half in Farrell who knew how to keep them going forward. So, no, they were a great pack of forwards. Terrific.
Couple of handy psychopaths in the second row.
Well, Palmier, he had a hell of a reputation. In fact, in the England games, really, it was Sholly was the main one.
Yeah,
because he just knew if you didn't keep an eye on him, he could catch you with one that could have ended the game for you. So, but no, afterwards they were great guys. I loved enjoying the company, but on the field, oof, ferocious.
Did they have a bar in the hospital in those days, Fran?
No, but well, Bobby Windsor always tells the story, isn't he, where the other guy that played just before them, it was even bigger, Alan Esteve from Bezier, talking to Bobby and just really warned him that he was going to slip one through from the second row. But they had a tremendous pack of forwards in those days. As I said, the best they ever played against.
It's always been the way, hasn't it? I'm interested that you say that they're not quite as fearsome now, and that's obviously, well, one thing that we've often said on this podcast is the French.
Only in terms of foul play. I mean, I always found, certainly in my experience, of all the countries in the world, the worst in terms of foul play were always the French.
Yeah.
That was because of the lack of discipline in their home competition. I mean, it was just standard practice that what they call it, a bagarre générale, a general punch-up, was just part of the game. Yeah.
But even now, it's fascinating, isn't it? The discipline in French rugby has been completely transformed. I mean, certainly since your day, but it's a different beast. But they're still prone, as the intellectual giant at Tighthead showed us last time out. They're still prone to the odd, just entirely pointless act of violence. It happened to them at the World Cup in Japan, did it not? When they had the guy sent off against Wales when they were big points up, and then went on to lose the game and got on a plane home. There's always just that lingering potential that there'll be a flashpoint from them.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's always in them. It's always there, just below the surface. But they've just been able to control it of late. But the guy, now whether he went in deliberately to headbutt the Scottish guy there, it pretty much looked like that. So it was an automatic red, but it's just bubbling below the surface. You just know if you get them excited and frustrated that they could bubble over and come up with something which you'd find quite ridiculous. I mean, the beauty of French rugby is they can do something absolutely breathtaking in terms of skill and running, and suddenly you go, oh no, can't believe he's just done that, with some act of foul play that is just unacceptable. But you're never going to change it. It's just there. It's in them.
If you'd committed such a misdemeanor as Hewett did against the Scots, Fran. I mean, you were a distinctive looking bloke on the field. He was probably the most distinctive looking bloke on the field. The only bloke who looked like Mohamed Hewett was Mohamed Hewett on the pitch. They watch it 97 times on a big screen, and then he says, "Who? Me?"
Me. Yeah. But he's forward. He's a front forward. We never give penalties away or foul play ever, do we? Just can look at the referee and say, "I can't believe you've done that, referee."
I'm going to come to Mohamed House's defence on this occasion. I think he's been much maligned, particularly by Hewett. I think that he definitely, it was a little bit surprising that 4 minutes after Gilchrist had gone, he put himself in a position to also be given his marching orders. But actually, the position was that they were in danger. They were on their own line. They were in danger of giving away a try. he was within a nanosecond because I think that that White had the ball in his hands. I'm not sure that he lifted it, but he had the ball in his hands. So it was a very, very fine judgment. He might have been offside. The head clash, I think, was accidental. I don't think that he aimed for his head. It all happens too quickly in that sort of circumstance. It wasn't best timed, but, one guy's stooping, the other guy comes in and the heads meet. It happens. And and the idea that Howes, because he planted a punch on Richie, 3 years ago now, is somehow a serial villain of the Palmier or Ambon or Avenant script, I think is not right. They have to be more disciplined. They are more disciplined. And one of the things that interests me about France with this game coming up is that Marchand, who is a very, very good hooker and extremely good over the ball. He's one of these flankers who's a turnover expert, a bit like the South African guy Marks. I think that Marchand's been playing for 80 minutes pretty well for the first 3 games, because Malvaca has been they brought on this guy Barlow towards the end, but he's had long stints in all 3 games. And if you look at the French pattern previous to that, is Marchand gets spelled at about half time and Malvaca comes on, and Malvaca has pretty well an identical skill set at the breakdown. And Malvaca is back for this game. So I think that France won't be they're not the most mobile side, but I think that they've got their bench very much in the South African mold, and they'll use it in that way against England.
Your defence of Howes is remarkable in many respects, Nick. But the most remarkable aspect of it is you're clearly in the wrong profession. You should have been a defence lawyer. There are.
I thought you were going to say boxing correspondent.
anyone in trouble with the authorities watching this podcast will be on the telephone to you, asking you to don a wig on their behalf. That's all.
I'll do it gladly.
If Howes,
especially if it's Howes's wig.
Yeah, I was going to say, ask him to come on the pod if he gets in touch.
Yeah.
France are bolstered by the return of Movaca. Another one is Danty, who Mofana hasn't necessarily set the world alight in the midfield. But Brendan, do you feel it's a bit soon for Danty to come back?
No, I think, if Sean Edwards and that have decided that training is good to go. I mean, he's such a key player for them, I think, that Danty at 90% would give them something. We mustn't be too sympathetic towards the French, but I'm feeling for a bit. I thought Gallagher had an amazing contribution to that last game before he went off with his ACL. He'd rediscovered some of his best form, and when he's playing well, he is a massive player for France. And he did quite a bit on one leg before he had to go off. So he was having a huge game, and I think he's just a sort of bloke you'd need at Twickenham. So they're going to miss him. I'm not quite sure how they're going to rejig things there. So I'll be interested to see what they do with that. But Danty, I think, is a big player for them. He's been a bit of a missing link for them in midfield. Him and Fickou were really beginning to take the world on, weren't they, before injury interrupted there?
Yeah, exactly. And you'd have to think it'll be Francois Cros who would come in for Geelong.
Yeah, who's a very decent player, but he's not Gallagher when Gallagher is at 100%, So there's a slight deficit there for France in the back row, I think.
Let's have a look at predictions for the weekend. Now, Chris, you weren't here, so you may not have heard the news, but you've got a friend now with his hand on the wooden spoon as well as you, in the form of Nick Cain. Yeah, but both of you still bringing up the rear. Now, Nick, you've predicted an England win. You're the only one to do it. Now, you got to stick by it. So give us the narrative in which that happens.
I think Fran mapped it out pretty well. I think that they play with speed. They do try and move France around and look for the same gaps that the Scots exploited so well. So yeah, I do think that. I mean, it's going to require their best game for some time. Not just in this Six Nations, but going back some way now. Back to the Australia tour, it's going to require better performances even than they put in there. And I think that they're just about capable of it. The scrum is not, doesn't seem, I mean, sometimes it can be a huge influence, even though there aren't as many scrums as there used to be. And sometimes it's almost incidental. So it depends what sort of a game you get there, because I do think that France will go after that England front row. But France have got, have obviously had injuries at tight head. I think that the guy that they've got in there, Falatea, is very handy. And I think that they'll target Sinclair. Bye will target Sinclair. No, there's no question they'll go for him. They've seen what South Africa have done. They've had a lot of success against that England front row, and they'll think that is a weakness. So we'll see if England can hold out there, or if the scrum isn't quite as influential a factor in the game as the French will hope. Then I think that England are capable of winning. Home advantage is huge. They've had 2 games where they found their feet, and I think. I don't think that he's. It's weird. I don't think that he's going to pick Smith to start. I think it will be Farrell, but I think that England might just edge it.
So you're actually standing by your prediction as well as having to stand by your prediction.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, you're the only one out of the 5 of us to predict an England win. Chris, how would you feel if you lost the grip on the wooden spoon completely?
I'd be distraught. I'd be distraught because I've never wanted to give Cain anything in my life.
I'm coming for it, mate. I tell you,
I fail to see how, in any fair world, I'm bottom of anything. I mean, I made these predictions, all of them, the whole set, before the tournament started. I was within 1 point of getting the precise score.
You were.
Stop moaning.
Unbelievable. I was going to ask Fran, actually, because Fran, you must have come across a referee who understood scrummaging during your long career in the front row. Do you think such a species still exists?
Some are better than others, but I still think that, 9 times out of 10, as far as I can see, they get the decision wrong. The number of times where you see a scrum going forward, the opposition tight head goes on the floor, and they penalise the team going forward. So I don't know. It's hard to. I know crafty front row forward, trying to con the referee, and you've got to be conscious of all that. But I still think, and in fairness, it is very difficult for them. But I still think the standard refereeing at the scrums is poor.
Interesting.
Is that because almost no refs will have ever played prop, whereas a lot of them would have played a little bit of in the backs or in the back?
That's a good point, Brendan. I don't think unless you've played in the front row, you fully understand the intricacies of it. And of course, I mean, there have been big changes from since I played, particularly on the engagement side of it. And I think that's where a lot of the problems stem from, where they've emphasised it so much that most of the penalties seem to come from that area.
Do you not think, Fran, that the old fold in, once everyone had turned up for the scrum, that the old fold in and then the scrum becomes active once the folded engagement has happened?
Yeah,
that's not a bad way forward, is it?
Yeah, well, I agree, because if you look at the moment, what you've got is 2 tons being persuaded to come together with such force that you're bound to have collapsed scrums and so forth. So folding in, you remove a lot of that engagement force, and I think that's where a lot of the problem starts from. So I agree. I go back to that. But, what do we know?
And if you're still blowing hard after sprinting to get to the next scrum and not having 30 seconds to prepare yourself and to faff around, it's not going to be such a violent collision, is it, initially? Because you're blowing hard.
And to speed the game up.
Yeah.
Which is what we all want to see.
QED.
Another law change we brought about there, boys. So
We live in
go
hope.
full circle, Fran. Everything comes back. We'll be all right.
Yeah.
We'll have Rucking one day.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Jim Telfer and Ian McGeechan. How on earth we've allowed the jackling to be part of our game? I mean, which lunatic would go over the ball, put his head near the floor, and allow a 20-stone bloke to run in from 20 yards to blast you off the ball? I mean, you got to be mad. So I'm sure a lot of the injuries and concussions must come in that area. But I agree. Jim and Geeks massively respected rugby men, so I'd agree with them. We need to get rid of that.
Once you, apart from the obvious danger of it, once you legitimize hands on the ball on the floor, hands on the ball on the deck, you've got a whole bag of problems, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, some people say, well, the risk of if you go back to rucking, the danger of it. Well, rucking was, even in New Zealand, where if you were anywhere near the ball, you got raked out. I mean, it was never really violent. I mean, there were acts of foul play, but of course you wouldn't do that now because, of course, the cameras and everything. So I don't think it's anywhere near the risk that people are talking about. And that, once again, I think it would speed up the game. It would suck more people into the breakdown, which is what we want to see, and create a bit more space outside. So there's a lot of advantages to it, but we don't seem to be thinking in that direction. Let's
move on to Scotland versus Ireland, which Fran kind of has the makings of an epic, weather permitting. It's a preview of the World Cup head-to-head later this year. Two teams very much at the top of their game in recent years. How excited are you for that one?
Well, that could be a superb game. And up in Murrayfield, Scotland will fancy the chances. But personally, this Ireland team is so good. I mean, I can't see them losing it. It'll be a very tight game, I think, and an exciting game to watch. Fast, open. But I just think Ireland are just so together at the moment. I mean, the discipline, ability at the breakdown, the way they play, the pace they play at, is fantastic to see. And to me, they are by some distance the best side in the Six Nations.
And it's absolutely, above and beyond the sum of its parts, isn't it? I mean, I think one of the remarkable things about this Ireland side is the teamship of it. Because if you were doing the old game of picking a world 15 now, there wouldn't be too many Irishmen massively in the conversation, 2 or 3 maybe. But I don't think, in the individual sense, they're playing brilliant rugby individually, but they're not stellar guys on the world stage yet. They may become so with a World Cup on the horizon. But as a team, as a group, and the framework in which they play and the understanding of that framework, they're absolutely outstanding. Fair play to them.
Brendan, would you love to see a Scotland win, just as a rebuttal to that?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Scotland team, but I think when we did our prediction 6 weeks ago or whatever, I came up with an Ireland Grand Slam, so I can't go back on that. I just endorse everything the lads say. I mean, that they're not only are they a brilliantly effective team, but they're a really good team to watch, Ireland, at the moment. And you don't get any sort of sense of panic with them. I think it'll be a hell of a game. I think Scotland will throw the kitchen sink at them. And, we've seen what Scotland can do when the force is with them. But I think Ireland will find a way of winning that. And then I think they'll beat England fairly handily to take the slam.
Yeah, I got to agree. Although I've got Ireland by 16 points, and I think that's quite a big margin. Few of us have got it a bit closer than that. Nick, Ireland are bolstered as well by quite a lot of returnees. Robbie Henshaw, Jamison Gibson-Park, Sexton's obviously back in, and Tyke Furlong, which is timely, given Finlay Beelam's injury. Which of those are coming back in as starters for you?
I would expect all perhaps bar Henshaw. Sexton will come back in, Furlong will come back in. I would think almost certainly Gibson Park has been their tempo man. So I would imagine that he will come back in, and they will be they'll slot back into the the machine as if there's been no interruption at all, and they'll probably fire it a bit faster and more powerfully. I would say. Yeah, they are. They're really formidable side at the moment, and they've got one or two, of those gems, I suppose, in there. I think Keenan at fullback, it sort of defies belief almost all the time. He seems to manage to wriggle through gaps. His timing's fantastic. He's not the biggest guy, but he's got this sort of wiry strength and speed, and he's very, very important to them, I think, in terms of giving them that sort of extra edge in attack. So I think that they've got the full hand at the moment.
He's a very high-class player, isn't he, Keenan? He's a high-class player. But if you look at his wings, Hansen and Lowe, if you were talking world-beating wings, they wouldn't be that high on your list. But the work rate and the opportunism that they're showing, it's just smacks of a side playing with the most enormous confidence, sense of security, and sort of optimism, which are all, as Fran will know, who played in very, very successful rugby teams, they're all component parts. All those, the abstractions of the game are still very, very important. It's how you feel about what you're doing a lot of the time gets you over the line.
Yeah, there are other potentially. I think he already is. He's a star. He's been very, very influential for them in this tournament so far. As Keelan Doris at number 8. I mean, he's a terrific player.
He certainly would go in the current World 15. Doris has been absolutely outstanding, but I think a lot of it stems from the success of the provinces, particularly Leinster, where I think the quality of the day in, day out coaching of those players really has come through into the Ireland team. And I'm not sure that, but there's probably 10 or 11 of them from Leinster, and it shows. And I agree with you, Chris. You look at them individually, and would they make a World 15? Well, yeah, 3 or 4 at most probably would. But collectively, by God, they're some team. So I love watching them play. It's everything about their play is positive, playing at pace, no matter where they are on the field, reading the situation in front of them. And they really are together. And, quite rightly, they're the number 1 team in the world at the moment.
And a big feather in the cap for Andy Farrell. I mean, when you consider that this is the first team he's ever run, he's been. That's a leap. I mean, and when he was appointed to that job, everyone knew Andy's strengths. I mean, he's a brilliant communicator. He is the inspirational guy in the dressing room. All of those things that he was during his time with England. Everyone looks up to Farrell. He's got the medals. He's got the trophies on his shelf, hasn't he? But to make such a brilliant fist of a difficult job, first time you're running something, just shows a bloke of considerable talent, I think.
Yeah, chapeau.
So, and total respect from the players, because he's been there, done it, got the T-shirt, and I love listening to him on his interviews. He never flustered, gives good, solid, sensible answers. Unlike 1 or 2 other coaches that we could mention, there's never any bullshit from Andy Farrell. It just states it. That's it. That's how where we're at and how we're going to play.
And the added bonus that compared to his son, he is a brilliant comedian as well.
Who'd bet against him for Lions coach in 2025 either?
He's nailed on.
Yeah.
He's nailed on.
You'd think so. So.
Paul Gatland's coming back.
Recreate the glories of the 2021 South Africa tour, eh? I personally would love to see a Scotland win. Would set up a hell of a grandstand finish on Super Saturday with 3 teams still in the running to win the championship. Fran, should we do your random rugby 15 very quickly? The 15 quickfire questions.
Oh, right, God, I didn't know this was coming.
Oh, I did. I sent them to you.
Did you? Oh, no, no, go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, the more spontaneous, the better. We'll jump straight
Props, you can't trust them. Prop forwards. Oh dear me, are they ever worth it?
in. Nickname.
Jaws.
Jaw. Oh wow, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Is it to do with your jaw or to do with the
I
character?
know it's to do with the film Jaws.
Yeah.
That one or two of my colleagues felt that I played like that, which was a bit unkind. But no, Mr. Smith gave it to me. Jaws. He even sent me when I went to South Africa in the 1980. As a present, he gave me a stationery set which had a Jaws thing printed on the back of the envelope. So that's where it came from.
That's very good. Best rugby memory.
1974, Port Elizabeth winning the third test.
Most embarrassing rugby memory.
Losing the fourth test in New Zealand in 1977.
Pre-game tune.
74, Flower of Scotland.
Nice.
And it was, instead of Proud Edward's Army, it was the Springbok Army.
Nice. Pre-game tune. Sorry, no. Post-game meal.
Post-game meal. Didn't eat a meal. Had a few beers.
Yeah, I was going to say, all right, what's your post-game poison then?
Yeah, a few pints of beer. I used to, when I first started playing for Liverpool, I'm going to 65, 66, I was a poor student, and I used to turn up to the club with £1 in my pocket. Now, to put that into context, £1 bought 11 pints of beer in 1966. So I always had 11 pints of beer on the Saturday after a game.
Still like that in Redruth.
Best player you've played against?
Robert Papa on board.
Best player you've played with?
Gareth Edwards.
Favorite player right now?
Ellis Genge.
Nice. Rugby idol?
Gareth Edwards.
Favorite stadium?
Twickenham.
Favorite gym exercise?
Oh, God.
Chris, you started laughing before I'd even asked that question.
Yeah, I didn't have one.
Occupation if rugby didn't exist?
Well, we've done okay in the textile industry, so yeah, I'd still be in the textile business.
Superstitions?
Always changed in the peg nearest the door.
And always had 11 pints after a game. I suppose that's superstitious.
11 pints after the game.
If you're nearest the door, you're first to the bar, aren't you?
But well, I just need to address that because a lad called John Crelling was the tight end in those days at Liverpool, and he had a proper job, so he had some money. So that about 10 o'clock, my pound used to run out. And I'd ask him, say, look, John, could I borrow £1 until training on Tuesday? Tuesday, giving the pound back. The following Saturday at 10 o'clock, you know the pound I gave you back on Tuesday, could I possibly have it back? And so it's the pound circulated round every week.
Rugby law you would change?
Playing the ball on the floor with your hands.
As in, you should be able to play the ball on the floor.
You should you should play it with your feet. You should go back to proper rucking.
Okay, nice. Best thing about working in rugby?
Working in rugby? Well,
just being involved in rugby.
Well, the friendships you make. I mean, it's just fantastic sport in that sense.
That was very quick fire. Nice one.
There you go. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it really was. Thank you for doing that, Fran. Right, back to the rugby. Brendan, you've frozen. Brendan, you're still frozen.
You're frozen.
Yeah, you're just about there. So when's the last time you can remember Italy going into a Six Nations fixture as favourites?
Towards the end of 2007, I think they were I think they had a couple of wins then. And 10 years ago, they beat Ireland at home in their last match. And I think I predicted them to win that one. I think I wasn't alone in that. They're having a good year that year. But you're absolutely right. This is proof positive of where they've come. I don't think they're quite such big favourites now that Capuccio is out.
Yeah.
He's a big player for them, but I still think they could well do it. They've still got some quality in the backs that we haven't fully seen yet. Menoncello's going to take the world by storm fairly soon. We haven't seen the best of him at all. But it'll be close, because just having that talisman, that magician who can get the try when they need it, is important for a team like Italy. And to suddenly not have him is going to be a bit of a test. Again, that's going to be a great game. It's going to be a hell of a good weekend, this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big miss, especially given how Wales kicked against England. If they did that.
Oh, if they did that against Italy, they'd be in serious trouble.
He would have had a field day. Fran, I want to ask you about, so Taulupe Faletau has said, and we touched upon this last week, I think it was, when we were speaking about Wales and actually getting up to perform for your country. And Taulupe Faletau has said it's hard to do that given their off-field issues at the moment. What do you make of those comments?
Well, it certainly doesn't help. I mean, it could work two ways, couldn't it? Either takes the morale out of the team or it brings them together. I don't think effort or pride in the shirt was on show at the England game. I mean, that was there. It was just lack of quality. I mean, the inside backs of Wales are probably the worst inside backs I've ever seen Wales put out there. And the kicking game, well, we know Freddie Stewart is tremendous under the high ball, but don't give him 15 yards to run it. The kicking was just so poor. That was a very, very poor back line that they put out there. So going to Italy. Well, I mean, the other nice thing about Italy is once again they're another team who are playing with real pace and ambition, and apart from some mistakes, through really lack of playing intense rugby on a regular basis that shows occasionally. But in terms of ambition, Capuozzo, I think, is a big loss for them. I mean, when he gets the ball, it looks as though everybody else has stood still. He's so quick in everything he does, so exciting to watch. So they will miss him, but I still think they, in a close game, I think they're good enough to beat Wales.
I don't think I've seen a player with footwork, that initial outburst of footwork. I've not seen anyone much closer to Jason Robinson than Capuozzo. I mean, he's remarkable. One question I would ask everyone though is how much better do you think the Wales backline will be once they can pick from Ealing Trailfinders?
Is that a serious proposition, that?
Well, people keep writing about it in the rugby paper, so it must be correct.
It must be true. Yeah, it must be true. It just seems such a strange thing to do, but anyway, there you go.
It's an interesting one because I think we all know that the only way that a cross-border move like that can happen is with the say-so of the national unions, and that say-so isn't there, as far as I understand it. And I think it would take pretty extraordinary circumstances for it to be rubber stamped, because where does something like that end? You've already got cross-border competition, so if anybody can decide where they want to play at any given time, you've got chaos. So I just don't see it, but I do see it as as Ealing sort of looking at another way of challenging the anti-competition measures that have been allowed to creep into the Premiership. I mean, the ring fencing of the Premiership is where this begins and ends, and it's something that has got to be sorted out, and sorted out properly, not a fudge.
Let's jump straight into the predictions for Italy versus Wales. It's an interesting one. Three of us, myself and the two wooden spooners, have predicted Wales, which I'm not, given their track record, I'm not feeling great about aligning with them.
Come join us.
Yeah, exactly. My throne might be in danger here, lads. Chris, can you justify a Wales win?
I think you'll find that I'm well known for my late bursts of glory.
Sorry.
You always were a Harlequins man, weren't you, Chris?
Speechless for a second, which is unusual. As I keep on pointing out to anyone who's interested, these predictions were made before the tournament started. I seriously did not expect Wales to be as dire as they have been in this tournament. I mean, it's been borderline tragic, actually, to see how they struggled. I mean, I know they have terrible problems, you know, the length and breadth of the game, so to speak, but been amazingly poor. And I absolutely take on board the comments that were made about the kicking game against England, which was beyond dumb. I mean, I couldn't believe really what I was watching, and listening to Jonathan Davis's commentary. Neither could he. He was close to spontaneous combustion from first minute to last. So it is quite. I can see how Wales can win the game, but I think it will be largely a forward-driven effort against an improving Italian pack. So I'm nowhere near as confident that the Welsh will win this game as I may have been in 1873 when I made these predictions in the first place.
I think, you know, I mean, one of the things is that the Italian pack is, has improved. Their whole game has improved out of sight under Crowley. I mean, the speed with which it's happened, even the transformation, you know, since last year's Six Nations, where we saw the sort of genesis of it, but the transformation's been really radical, and their forwards are probably as good as any pack in the competition at the moment. So Wales are going to find themselves, you know, confronted by an extremely motivated side, and one with a fly half in Garbisi who can, you know, pull the strings at the right time. They look as if they've got a hell of a young number 8 in this guy, Lorenzo Canoni. So, you know, they are, you know, they will miss Capuozzo hugely, you know, I've no doubt. But yeah, that prediction, I'm glad you're with us, Ollie. That prediction's looking a little bit dodgy. And remember, it's my throne, not yours.
Aren't you defending it well, Nick?
We spoke earlier about the England back row. That Italian back row has come on a stack because I mean, apart from anything else, the one bloke we didn't know a lot about, Negri, is back at his something close to his best, and he's a good player when he's at full tilt. So the young number 8, the skipper on the open side, you know, once they get Jake Pelledri back fully fit and firing, pray God that happens, they will have a decent set of loose forwards to go to the World Cup, and they may not, you know, they may have slightly more joy in the World Cup than they've had in the previous ones.
Fran, make the case for Italy then, although the lads have kind of already done that for you.
Well, if you look at Italy in all the games, they've been extremely competitive, playing a quick, fast game, good pack of forwards, exciting behind the scrum. If they can reproduce anything like the form they've shown in the first 3 games, I just think they're going to be too much for Wales, who are a pretty poor team at this moment in time. I was in Cardiff and for the England game, and I've never known the Welsh boys to be so despondent about their team. You know, they were you know, crying in the beer as, you know, probably the most despondent I've ever known a Welsh outfit in Cardiff. They were just had no positive vibes at all about the team.
But it's a cumulative thing, isn't it, Fran? I mean, if you look at the structural problems and the financial problems, and the problems you have around generating top end players and keeping them in Wales in this financial climate. I mean, all those things piled one on top of another That's a very, very long road they're on. And you can't see the end of it, can you?
Oh, Welsh rugby is in hell of a mess. I mean, from the structures governing the game, financially. I mean, Ian and his team have got a hell of a job there to sort this out. I mean, the starting point has got to be hopefully the new constitution that they're proposing, which will begin to take them in the right direction. But at the end of the day, they haven't got any money. They're losing a stack of money. Will the players accept they're going to have to cut back quite significantly from where they're being paid at the moment? And the answer is probably no. And they're going to go and find employment somewhere else, which is fair enough. That's their prerogative. But it's not good for Welsh rugby.
What are your feelings, Fran, about the? Sorry, what are your feelings about the? Particularly the one that England and Steve Borthwick faced with, is England players going and playing overseas, mainly in France. Do you feel strongly about that? Do you feel that they should be allowed to represent England as well as, seek as good living conditions or working conditions rather as they can?
Yeah, I think that argument has been lost for England. They should allow them to go. I mean, the good thing about England, we've got so much talent and just the sheer volume of players. It shouldn't really affect the quality of the Premiership very much at all. So I agree with Steve Borthwick. I think the debate's over. If they want to go to France, that's fair enough. Maybe you do it by reducing the little bit like they're talking about Wales, that those players who've got 25 caps or more will be allowed to do it. The younger players, maybe you want to keep them in. So there's a compromise there, but I think Steve's right. He should be allowed to pick them.
There's a parallel here with cricket, isn't there? I think rugby's on that same course, that cricket has had to accept that the have back will travel player is going to be, he's going to play in 5 different 2020 competitions, and he's still going to be available for this, that, and something else. It seems to me it's a player's world now, and even the New Zealanders who have never ever picked anyone from outside playing outside their country. I don't know whether Jamie Salmon in New Zealand when they picked him. He probably was, but even they've accepted the fact that between World Cups, your Brodie Retallicks and your Jerome Kainos and everyone are going to push off to Japan, spend 2 years there, put some hay in the loft, as the fragrant Boris Johnson will put it, and then come back. And as long as they're back in town within a reasonable amount of time before a World Cup, the New Zealand Rugby Football Union are fine with it, because they have to be fine with it. They don't have a choice.
Yeah. And I think the same will happen with England. So, let's get on with it and agree some form of structure or regulation that allows sensibly that to happen.
And of course, if that was the case in England now, Nick, your mate Alex Donbrandt might not be the England number 8, because Zach Mercer would have been in at the start of the tournament.
Talking of Donbrandt, he's actually been playing pretty well. I thought he played very well.
Yes, he has. I mean, I was never completely sold. That's the best. The last game was the best I've seen him play by a country mile at the top level. And when Mercer comes back, I think that'll be a proper competition, because Mercer.
I like Mercer. Yeah. So it's good for England. Good. Oh, he's going to Gloucester, isn't he? Not coming back to Bath.
No. I mean. Yes, you would have thought that would have occurred to Finn Russell before he put his name on the contract.
Sends a message.
Everyone else is avoiding this place like the plague. Why have I just signed up for 3 years? Hey ho.
Mind the million quid a year might have something to do with it.
The money may be involved.
Last thing I want to do before you wrap up, I need to say back to the rugby, because I'm going to edit it in. Let's just run down the predictions league very, very quickly. Chris and Nick, I'm sure you'd rather we didn't. Chris, I am going to give you credit, because your 32-21 call for France-Scotland was very, very impressive. And you did get quite a lot of bonus points for that. Hence, you've caught up with Nick, despite... what did you predict? You predicted a Wales to beat England, didn't you?
I predicted a couple of Welsh victories.
And it's gone Welsh.
Yeah, I mean, apart from being the arse end of a pantomime horse, I couldn't look more stupid at the moment.
Fran, you're currently just behind myself and Brendan. You're on a team with who's played Jonathan Davis, Scott Hastings, and Jerry Guscott, who have set you up pretty nicely for the tournament so far. So do keep up with that. But it's right. I'm sure I'll fall behind this weekend after my garbage predictions. So well, Chris, I'll be closer to you than I've ever been by next week.
Well, every cloud has a silver lining.
And what's the silver lining here?
Well, I'm just amused at the thought that it's the first time that Fran's been mentioned in the same sentence as Jonathan Davis, Scott Hastings, and Jeremy Guscott ever.
Yeah. It's a different skill set, Chris.
Well, absolutely, absolutely, and of course, without you, what are they?
Correct.
Right, guys, we'll wrap up there.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, oh God, I can't wait for round 4. It's going to be a good one.
Good to see you all.
Hey, it's very nice to see you, Fran.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Look after yourself, Take care. Take care.
Stay strong.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday. And to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.